Good morning, everyone. Lee's here. I've got the Wall Street Journal, and I've read it cover to cover, and I've got only four articles I'm going to pull out today. Some of them very quick, and we'll get you updated on what I thought was the most interesting of the day. So, first of all, GM spinoff. So, a lot of people are looking at GM and thinking that GM, General Motors, should spin off an electrical vehicles program into a separate company. So why would they do that? Well, first of all, I think they've looked at Tesla, looked at the market capitalization and how well that stock is doing, in spite of Tesla barely making a profit, and looking at that and saying why not? Also, when you do the spinoff, you can access cheaper funding, and EVs require a huge amount of R&D to get them going. So we'll watch that space to see what happens there. Interesting observation I've had about this, and I'm not sure technically if I'm right, but I believe I am. Right now, Tesla really is the only market for emission credits. So, because the other companies aren't producing enough EV vehicles, they have to buy these credits from Tesla. And so these are market priced, by the way. And so Tesla is making a lot of money off these. In fact, as I've reported before on this program, without EV credits, right now, emission credits, Tesla would not be making money every quarter. They would be losing money. And that would be a huge issue right now. So just thinking out loud, what if GM spun off their EV division, and then GM and possibly Ford and Dodge, Fiat, I guess, what if they stop buying credits from Tesla and started buying from GM? So the GM spinoff. So there would suddenly be a market for credits, and maybe market pricing would bring those credit pricing down, that credit prices down, and they single-handedly could potentially cause Tesla to start losing money. Interesting perspective on this. I don't know if I've got all my financials lined up there, but I've got some smart friends that will tell me if I don't. So it would certainly change the market pricing for EV credits. There's no doubt about that. Second article, S&P's hit a new all-time record price, new all-time in the midst of COVID. So S&P is up 4.9% this year. Amazing. By the way, it's the fastest recovery ever from a bear market. That bear market that hit in February when COVID hit. Remember, just before COVID hit, it hit a new record. It's now surpassed that record, and so it's recovered everything from the COVID. So, by the way, Clorox is one of the big winners, up 49% this year so far. The Clorox stock market price. Not hard to tell why that market is up. So when you watch the Democratic convention last night, was there any mention about the stock market and how poor it's doing since COVID has hit, and use that as an economic marker for how bad everything is going? No, you didn't. And no mention of the stock market. It is unbelievable right now. Many people believe that the market is the first one to see that the COVID is all but over. They can see the end of the COVID virus. They see a vaccine coming, and they see businesses come roaring back. So we'll see if that's true, but they're kind of a leading indicator to say everything is back. So the Democrats convention will not be focusing on the market this year. They do not want good news from the Trump administration right now. There's no question they don't want Trump good news, and for good reasons. If I was running that convention, I wouldn't be focusing on anything that made Trump look good. That's a lie by omission, but we can always argue on that, and certainly the Republican convention will be doing the same thing. Third article, a quick hitter here. Parents are using the Alexa modules, and by the way, mine's just going to try to answer me now. I just see it lit up. But they're using those Alexa modules to tell the kids about chores and to remind them. For instance, feed the dog, set the table, setting up a. He's telling me we don't have any kids set up to do any chores, but parents are saying it's great because lots of kids have these in the room. They have them all over the house, so they can make announcements all over the house, and the kids can't talk back to the Alexa mods like they can to parents. So I thought that was interesting. Interesting use of the of these great announcement modules that are in all of our rooms. It really has changed the technology. I work in my garage on an old Willys that I'm converting, and I used to have a radio out there to listen to talk radio. I don't have a radio anymore. I have an Alexa module out there in my garage just dedicated for it, and I just tell it which channel to tune to, and I get real clear radio coming into my garage, and I don't have to deal with changing channels on a radio or whatever. And by the way, while my hands are dirty and everything, I can give it directions on what channels to change, volume up and down, and so on. So last article today, Postmaster Stops Improvements. That's right. In the midst of a new Postmaster General and an Inspector General that created a report saying certain improvements needed to be made in the post office, we've stopped all improvements in an organization that is badly run and very inefficient right now by lots of people standards. By the way, hugely popular. Hugely popular. I want to make sure I'm clear on that. Over 90% people believe in the post office and think it's a great government organization, pseudo-government organization, I think we should say. But very inefficient by anybody's standards, including an independent inspector general and the new postmaster general, which he's a logistics expert by anybody's definition from an independent company that's been very, very successful. So he came out the other day and said to avoid even the appearance of any interference in the upcoming election, they've stopped all improvements. Now he was a little bit different about what the overtime is going to be, and we'll hear about that more from the union members. But the removal of mailboxes and of sorting machines is stopped until after the election. Remember, they look at mailboxes all the time. I think what they see is if there's less than 19 or 20 pieces of mail in a drop box, they'll pull it out and move it to a better location or pull it out completely. And so sounds reasonable, costs a lot of money to check those drop boxes every day, in fact, multiple times every day, some cases. So makes sense, but in the hyper-partisan era we live in, they were all filmed, this mailbox being removed, and single-handedly these mailboxes were going to affect the election. So we've stopped all improvements of the post office. The president of the Postal Workers Union said this was good news, but Congress needs to give them more money. And he was happy that some postal workers had sounded the alarms on these removing sorting machines and removing post office boxes, drop boxes. So remember, this is a problem when you have a union. They're not going to toe the company line. They want more overtime. They want to keep their jobs, which is going to be difficult to do. Mail volume during the Obama presidency alone was down 32%. And by the way, no improvements were made during that time period, right? He got on his soapbox the other day talking about needing to protect the election from the post office. That post office has been going down for a long time, multiple presidencies, and this presidency has put somebody in place to handle it. So be careful with the post office workers and their so-called unbiased opinions. They're biased on their own pocket right now. Convince me if I'm wrong. So observations. So here's a life observation that I've made. If the first response or the only response is, I need more money, ignore it. And by the way, this comes from dealing with teachers' unions, from managers that worked for me, from children, for family situations, across the spectrum. If the first response is more money, they're not serious. It needs to be balanced. It needs to say, yes, the post office needs more money. And by the way, maybe they need more money because the rates aren't set high enough, or because they're doing Saturday delivery, and they shouldn't be anymore. Many people believe that that's a time past. The cost is too high for the benefit. By the way, delivery of regular mail, packages, prescription drugs would still happen. So this is a test of mine. You need more money. Schools, when you come to me and say need more money, show me where you've done efficiency. Show me where only half your employment count is teachers and the other half is all overhead positions. And then tell me you're efficient, and then I'll give you more money. So beware also in this election process, in this vote by mail controversy, beware of shiny objects. When all the attention is being placed on the post office, that's the shiny object. Okay, there's the shiny object up there. Watch it very carefully. Okay, there's the shiny object. What are we not paying attention on? So remember, 132 million. If we do completely vote by mail, there's about 132 voters in the U.S. every presidential election. All those ballots are going to go through the mail system. Where are they going to end up? Your local election office. So do you think they can handle the increased load? Normally they process right now around 25 to 30 million ballots every election cycle, okay? That's going to go up by 4 times, right? 32 million to 132 million. So can the election office handle all those manual ballots? Remember, they have to be checked for signature. They have to check the postmark. That controversy is still around. We'll see where that goes. And they have to make sure it's sealed properly. And they have to do that by hand unless they have technology to handle that. And I haven't seen that so far. So they have limited staff. We've seen that from the New York election. We've seen that from the Michigan election. And mark my words, without some huge improvements in those areas, we're not going to get election results for better than a week in a lot of areas in the country. How's that going to go in a very controversial presidential election year, when the last election was very close, and this one could prove to be as close, if not closer? And so, where are all the people that want vote by mail? Where are all the where are all their challenges to their local election offices to make sure they're ready. Do they have 4 times the staff that they had before? 4 to 5 times the staff? I doubt it. Another observation. You keep hearing this, the media standard talking point. It's almost like sometimes they compare the talking point. It's said the same way. You ever notice that when you flip channels? It's said the same way. There's little evidence of mail-in voting. Little evidence of mail-in voting. So this is like saying, somebody said this and I thought this is pretty well. This is like saying that bank robberies are so rare, so let's move the money from the vault and pile it in the middle of the lobby. Let's move the money to the middle of the lobby, because really, we almost never hear of a bank robbery anymore. Very rare anymore, right? So on mail-in voting, the fraud is so small that let's go overnight and add another 100 million ballots from everybody in the world. By the way, mail-in ballots now are sent to absentee people. These are people that have actually sent in a form and said, please send me my ballot by mail. Different from taking a voter roll that many people know is fraught with peril. These voter rolls are awful. And look at California's cleanup if you don't think that's true. Millions of addresses thrown off because they were deceased or moved. So, and by the way, elections are high on a list of people, a list of things that people would like to steal. Okay, don't get me wrong. This has gone on forever. You know, at the turn of the century, they were buying drinks for people in bars to go vote, and election fraud hasn't stopped from that point to this point. So take the money, pile it in the middle of the lobby. That may be what we're doing with massive mail-in voting. We'll see. So the fact that history showed there's been very little mail vote fraud doesn't mean there can't be. So with mail vote, if you wanted to disrupt elections, what would you do? Somebody said, what I would do is dump a whole lot of illegibly signed, unpostmarked ballots in the system and wait till it was a close election, bring my lawyers in and accuse the other side of disenfranchising votes. By the way, this really happened in New York. Look at the New York election and see what happened. Those ballots were not postmarked, and the post office told them that this is what would happen. And they were not postmarked. They were not sealed in many cases. In many cases, they weren't even signed. So what do they do with these ballots? Watch what happens. In New York, the rejection rate was over 20%. In a close election, if we have a rejection rate of 20% of the ballots, we will have another hanging chad issue on our hand. And the lawyers will be all over. You don't think lawyers are going to be there? And by the way, you don't think some really detestable lawyers are going to be around? Look up the name Mark Elias. That's the Clinton DNC lawyer who retained Fusion GPS in obtaining the Russian dossier. It started everything on that fake Russian dossier that's disrupted this country for 3 years now. Where's he now at? Well, he's at the forefront of all the election issues. Just Google him on news and you'll see him commenting about different election and different mail-by voting issues. This is one of the lawyers that's at the forefront right now. You don't think I've got concerns about post-election lawyers coming forth? Look out. What we can hope for is a large margin in the elections and take these people and the election office issues out of the formula, and maybe over time we can get better at doing mail by elections. mail by vote elections. And I think over time we can. My primary issue has been that we're doing way too much with 2 months to go, with lots of evidence that says we can do it very badly. And New York and Michigan are two great examples. If you want to look at, it's hard to look at those two examples and say anything went good about those two. So, last opinion piece, the Biden DNC has been quiet on the economic recovery. If you've noticed the last two nights, they've gone after COVID and they've gone after anybody but Trump. Trump is not fit to lead the country. And by the way, look at COVID and keep looking at COVID. So, what have you heard from Biden about the economic recovery and what he will be doing? Almost nothing. Some things about tax the wealthy, but is that going to recover the economic mess that we've been in? So what you might do is say, okay, he's bragging about his teaming up with Obama and the 8 years they had together. So if you look at that and you look at that record, what he's promising is the slowest economic recovery in modern times. And that's, by the way, what the 8 years economic recovery is. Many people look at that chart, and what they'll do is they'll go to the end of that chart and they'll say, they'll look at that end of that chart and say where that economic recovery ended when he handed it off to Trump, and say, look how he handed off a great economy to Trump. What they won't show you is it took them 8 years to get to that point, and it was anemic at that point. So the average economic growth during that 8 years is 2.3%. Economists all agree it was sluggish growth and it was very shallow. By the way, the labor recovery, they won't talk about that. That was the worst labor recovery in generations. In October of 2009, unemployment was 10%. In March of 2017, it was 4.4%. That's finally got back to pre-recession levels 8 years later. Labor participation actually got worse. In 2008, it was 66%. 2017, it was 63%. Okay, went down 3% in labor participation. Some of that was caused by policies like unemployment extension to 99 weeks. By the way, does that sound familiar? Unemployment extension forever? It's exactly what they've tried to do recently, and Trump and the Republicans wouldn't agree to a $600 a week unemployment extension because Republicans believe that keeps people out of the labor force. And we've got lots of evidence that in fact happened. And then they expanded eligibility for food stamps, which also kept people in that welfare loop. So, and also, remember the healthcare focus on 1/6 of the economy. That's that healthcare focus, that Obamacare focus that the Democrats used when they had both houses and the presidency those first 2 years. So they used that. Meanwhile, the economy wasn't growing. So, be careful when you go back and say Biden's going to give you more of what they gave you before. And last, on the opinion page, why Biden chose Kamala Harris. A lot of emphasis on African American woman. Okay, you'll hear that over and over again. Interesting enough, he didn't need an African American. He's got that vote. Democrats get 80 to 88% of that vote every single election cycle. Do you really think he needs a black person on the ticket to get that vote? Does Trump really think he's going to siphon off a huge section of that vote. I don't think so. And remember, they don't need it for women. Women vote. Even when Trump won the election, women voted for Hillary and the Democrats in a wide margin. So didn't need it for women. Did he need it for California to take that state? Well, that's a joke. Democrats don't need any help. In fact, they've got new laws in place that have Democrats running against Democrats. So they've got that sewed up. California is sewed up for the Democrats right now, and if they can get their power turned back on, they'll vote for Democrats in huge amounts. So, what did he need Kamala for? Progressives. He's still trying to tie that together, and you could see that over the last couple of nights, all the way from Kasich to Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders says, "You better do what I brought to the table. You better bring these progressives' ideas forward." So it's really pretty smart, though, what Biden has done and Democrats have done by putting Biden in place. If it had been Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Trump could have kind of run against a socialist. So, and I think it would have been easier for him. But he can't do that right now because he's running against Biden, which everybody says is a moderate, came out of the Obama administration. And it's really tough to tie that socialism moniker onto him. So we'll see how that works, but it does make it more difficult for Trump because people are going to see Biden as just a nice guy, moderate, down the middle. We remember him from the Obama eras. But what's his cabinet going to look like? Well, we've seen a little picture of that by seeing his vice president candidate. And we've seen a little picture of that by Bernie Sanders saying this is what's going to happen. And we've seen a big picture of that by looking at the Democratic platform. And if you've read that from cover to cover like I have, that is not a moderate platform. That is a very progressive platform from top to bottom. Only thing missing, and it's halfway there, is Medicare for all. That's the only thing I can see missing from a completely progressive platform. So great day with the Wall Street Journal. Appreciate your comments, and let's have another great day. And thanks again for joining me. Hope you enjoyed it today. See you tomorrow. Cheers.